Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Align Your Mind with Jonathan and
Alexa. Today's episode is going to be about transitioning back to school after a 4-month summer and getting back into the swing of things.
so we know that this year is definitely all over the place and everything's still undetermined on how we're going back. And for our listeners, some of you guys may be fully online now. Some of you guys may, for college, be on campus but online, or some of you guys might be hybrid where you're going to school half the time, doing online half the time, or for the very few of you guys that are doing fully back to school in the classrooms, it's still an adjustment. So Lex and I are just going to go through some of the kind of frustrations that you may be feeling and really knowing that you're not alone and how we can get through this. So Alexa's first going to talk about a little bit of the college standpoint because I know that started more recently. Then I'll kind of segue into secondary, elementary, middle, and high schools.
So for college, I attend University of Central Florida, and this whole quarantine, we were trying to figure out, should I go up to school? Should I stay home and do online? Should I go up and do online? And as the start date for school approached, every college was stranded in finding whether or not to have in-person classes. And as it turned out, my classes all were online. And I was expecting maybe one or two to be online. For me, I was enrolled in a biology class, and I know a lot of other college kids can relate to this. My lab was going to be online, and I just found that that was going to be very difficult to understand, and that required me to switch my schedule. So the first thing I want to talk about is the complications of scheduling, which we have all already figured out, but for me, it's still a complication because I'm getting used to being in these classes that I wasn't I wasn't supposed to be in, or I wasn't planning on being in. So all of these classes online, some of them aren't even on Zoom. I just have assignments and I have to just turn them in. And for some people, that can be very difficult. Me, myself, I am a visual learner, so it's a little bit more difficult to do, like physical science, for example, do that online with no instruction. It gets difficult, and emailing professors, sometimes they don't answer. Just know you're not alone. One thing I found very helpful is within Canvas, which I'm sure all schools use at this point, there's a messaging feature that you can actually send to all the students. So for the majority of my classes, at least one student has reached out and said, here's a link to join a Discord conversation or a GroupMe conversation. And we've all been kind of chatting in there saying how we all have the same complications and how we're all stressed out about the same things. And for me, that was something that really helped, knowing I wasn't alone. So I do recommend, if that is one of your struggles or one of the stressors in your life right now, I do recommend, getting with someone from your class and just reaching out and being like, hey, here's a link, join this so we can all stress out together, and then we'll relieve some of our stress. So that's a big one for me. Jonathan, what do you have for lower school levels?
Yeah, I think Alexa hit a lot of very good points just now about kind of like socially how we can still interact with people. And I know group chats are a big way. And one thing here in Broward schools, I go to Fort Lauderdale High School, and this is my senior year. And all of our schools are online for the time being, but they're doing Teams meetings or Zoom meetings per se throughout the entire day. So what that's like is it's just like a regular school schedule. You have a lunchtime, you have first period, second period, third period, fourth period, so on and so forth. And then you have to sit in that class for the full 90-minute slot or however long that class may be. And something that I found rather interesting, just because it is high school, middle, and elementary, is that the teachers are teaching just like they would in a regular classroom. You have independent time to do whatever assignment you need to get done, and then you also hear the lecture. But it's pretty an interesting kind of way to segue into, because we had a version of online school, I think, that we were all expecting, that we did last year at the end of how everything was just kind of an abrupt end, where it was just assignments due and you get them done and you're good. But this is more of a not so much rigorous but time consuming activity. But one thing that I've realized with the teachers is that they're allowing you to do that a lot of the work done in class per se. So you don't really have any homework because you're home the whole time. So it's just like a weird differential of like how you can split up your time and when you're really utilizing your time the most. But some of the beneficial things that I found is that a lot of people are starting group chats for the classes, and that's just students helping students regarding technical issues. Remind and Canvas chats have been really helpful as well on the standpoint of if your teacher can't make the class because they're having technical issues, then no one can make the class, and then you're frustrated just waiting there in his holding room the whole time. But I think it's really cool because I think in the future we're going to see this used a lot more, just because now everyone's really familiar with the technology.
Yeah, and Jonathan, one thing that you mentioned, you always have to look at the positives in situations, and this, although all of this has been very negative and it's very stressful and it's very concerning, there are things that are benefits to online schooling. Like Jonathan said, one of them is working at your own pace and having group chats made and having more free time. You can always look at the negatives in situations, but like Jonathan and I used to say in our other podcasts, like the more positivity you put out is the more positivity you're going to get. And I think that's something that's really important that we all need to focus on, especially right now, school or no school, just all of the coronavirus and all of the quarantining and things closing down. It's just, there's always at least one positive to a situation, and sometimes that positive builds upon it. So although something may not sound so great, like I'm home and I expected to be in Orlando, looking at the statistics and looking at everything that's going on, I'm glad that I stayed home because every college has a skyrocketing amount of cases, and it's not the best to be quarantined alone in a town you're not familiar with. So my positive so far has been the ability that I could stay home and that I could do online schooling in a time like this. So you always want to think about that kind of stuff. And I think it's important to look at both sides, but always focus more on the positive.
And for some of the schools that are doing hybrid, I know we haven't really touched on that yet, but for anyone going back into any place with a large congregation, such as a school or even a work environment, if you're working, and you're kind of thinking about your kids going back into that same environment. I have a few family and friends that are doing the hybrid situation for school, and essentially they go to school on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then they have off Tuesday and Thursday where they kind of like sanitize and whatnot, and then it like flips where they go on Tuesday, Thursday, and then they're off Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And they said that it's going pretty well per se. It's just a little worrisome because we're not used to the sight of seeing a bunch of people. And I'm sure you guys seen the pictures. I know I have on social media with like schools in Georgia and schools in Pennsylvania, just like completely overcrowded with people. And that's something scary, and it can be overwhelming. And one thing that mindFULL is doing for schools that just have students overwhelmed, whether it's virtually, online, or hybrid, or fully in school, brick and mortar, we're trying to develop this thing called School Tools. It's actually up on our website right now, mindfulme, that's with 2Ls.org. And something that's cool with this is it's just 3-minute activities, so it doesn't take a huge chunk of the teacher's time up. And we just want them to play it sometime throughout the day, or if you're walking in the hallway. I know at Fort Lauderdale we get 10 minutes to walk in the hallway. Sometimes you can just play it and listen and breathe as you sit on the stairs or something of that nature. And Alexa's going to go a little bit more into that.
So like Jonathan said, these things are going to be called, or they are called, school tools. So the whole purpose of them is to take, like Jonathan said, 3 minutes out of your day, out of your teacher's day, and breathe. As always, we always have our meditations up on our channel, our podcasts, on, any platform that you can reach. And during study hall, I know high schools have study halls. During study halls, plug in your headphones. You're not required to be on the Zoom during that particular period. Plug in your headphones and just listen. Take that hour and a half to just relax before you start doing your work. It only takes 3 minutes, or if you listen to a meditation, 5 minutes, whatever it is. That's something that's also really important. And that's also another positive is online schooling has given us more opportunities to practice mindfulness. And not only is it more available time, but it's more resources as well. With all this going on, you're seeing the counties come up with more and more objectives when it comes to mindfulness, and more videos and resources and Canvas pages. So I would definitely take advantage of that Mindful Me especially, since we are working with these districts and we do have our own resources and our own content, it's always easy to reach, like Jonathan said, on our website, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you can reach it. I definitely recommend taking 5 minutes out of your day to de-stress and look at that as another positive as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I'm a senior, so I'm especially relevant to the topic of stress of applications. That's what we kind of went over last year. And Alexa and I, that was one of our first episodes, just how to deal with stress of not knowing what school you're going to and stuff of that nature. But the really cool thing is that this year there's a huge curve in how you apply to school, especially because some schools aren't even requiring a standardized test, other schools are, and there's a lot of more optional essays that'll be graded more tediously. So I think that a lot of people are seeing stress with that, and I know quite a bit of seniors listen to our podcast, so I would just suggest taking it really nice and taking your time with it. It doesn't have to be rushed because it's not due till November, so I wouldn't put too much stress on trying to rush it and get a final product within 2 or 3 days. Definitely take your time with the application, and know that if you ever need it, you can reach out to your counselors or anyone at the school and wherever you go to school, and I'm sure they'd gladly be able to help you out with that.
And just because I've already been through that, I think something I can add to rising freshmen in college and seniors now, writing your essay is probably the most calming thing to do, but most stressful thing. All you have to talk about is you, what you've been through, what you want to do, why you want to go to that school, so on and so forth. And the SATs for me specifically, I didn't do ACT, but I did do the SAT. And I took it about, I think, 3 times. And each time I was more and more stressed. And although some schools aren't requiring it, I know that there are some schools that are. But like Jonathan said, there are other alternatives such as grading an essay more tediously, or looking through your application more tediously, or looking at your grades and all of that. There's a lot of things that go into acceptance into a college. And I think that that's something that is inevitably stressful. But at the same time, with all of this going on, there are going to be precautions taken to ensure that students are getting accepted where they need to be accepted. And not that it's going to be any easier, because any application process is strenuous, but just take that into consideration. Don't worry your mind 24/7 about it. Like Jonathan said, they're doing November. So start now, little by little. Personally, I made a plan. I wrote down what I wanted to say in my essay, and then I organized what order I wanted to say it. And like Jonathan said, reaching out to your counselors is always a helpful tool that you have at all times. And start now. And by the time November comes, you'll be more than ready to submit it. You'll feel confident. But if you wait until the end of October, that's where you're going to run into some issues. So, of course, start as early as you can and ensure that what you're writing is what you want to write, because I guarantee you're going to start more than once. I think I wrote about 5 different essays, hated them all, started again, wrote another 4, hated them all, wrote another 3. And each time they did get better and better, but you don't want to submit something you're not confident in. So no matter how many drafts it takes, start now so you have all the time you need to perfect it. That's including Jonathan, don't start late.
I will try my best. I'm definitely known for procrastinating, but I will definitely try to start and use those tips Alexa just gave us. I'm definitely expecting to write it a few times, and my biggest concern, well, the concern that I'm seeing as I'm writing, is I keep going over the word limit, so I have to cut, and then I'm not sure which part to cut. So it's just a fun time, but I definitely know it's relating to a bunch of people, so I wanted to include it. And one thing that I kind of want to focus in on a bit more is Mr. Katz, or Dan, who's on the Mindful Me board. He's kind of the CEO, and what he does is he's also my teacher at Fort Lauderdale High School. And he started off one of our classes with no curriculum. He just wanted to know how everyone was doing. And it was just supposed to be 10, 15 minutes. It went on for the full hour and a half. But it was really interesting because he was able to actually And I was able to, as a student, kind of hear what everyone was thinking. And the overwhelming theme, which I'm sure Alexa can relate to, is she's probably seeing with her classmates in college, is that everyone's kind of really frustrated with everything going on in the world. I mean, if you look at the news, it's a constant news cycle of there's something always happening. I feel like we've lost a lot of people that weren't expecting to be lost this year, and it just seemed like there's one thing on top of another. And one person put it, I'm not going to say their name, but one person put it in our class like they feel like everything they're doing is not impactful enough versus everything they could be doing that's going on in the world. They feel like school is really the last place that they need to be, or that work per se is the last place they need to be, or they just think that they could be doing more and stuff of that nature. So I think it's really easy to identify that some people are just like overwhelmed and frustrated and feel like they can't do anything. And I was wondering if on the college standpoint, if Alexa was able to see any of that.
I know for UCS specifically, I can't speak on many other schools. I know that most students are actually working from home. I don't know that many students that are up at campus, but I do know that one of my friends that goes to college in Chicago at Loyola, she was saying how there was a huge protest and, kids got arrested and it was a big mess and there was a lot of, commotion going on specifically around the school, and that she had posted on her Instagram. She was just saying how it's weird how everyone expects us to focus on furthering our education when there's stuff that hasn't been resolved that we could solve with our education that we have now. And I thought that was interesting, and it definitely, I know for her, it took her mind off of schooling, and, our focuses are all in multiple different places, especially right now. So yeah, I agree that there are many students, as well as teachers, that feel like they could be doing more. And I do feel as though a lot of people feel that way. Coronavirus, Black Lives Matter protests, whatever it is, whether it's there or not, whether it's in front of our face or it's just out into existence, a lot of people feel as though they can always be doing more. And, although that's true, we've always said to live in the moment and to focus on the now. So whatever you can do now is what's going to help your future and everyone else's future. So instead of sitting there worrying, what else could I be doing? After school, make a plan, do whatever you need to do. And if you can't multitask, put them in steps. Do one thing after another to focus on what you need to focus on and what's most important to you. Now, I'm no way saying throw away school, because obviously, especially at the lower level, we all need a high school degree. We all need, some education in our lives. So I do think that multitasking is a big part of what we're going through right now.
Yeah, and for mindfulness, multitasking isn't always the greatest thing because you should focus on one thing. But I feel like everyone we know has been multitasking. I'm a basketball fan. I'm a really big LeBron James fan. And one thing, if you guys were following the news, last week the NBA did a boycott. And the reason being was because a lot of the players didn't want to stay in the bubble because they felt like a lot of the work that they could be doing would be much more impactful outside of it. And one thing interesting that he said is he didn't want to continue playing at one point, and he's favored to win. Well, not favored, but he's one of the top teams to win it all this year. And he said he didn't really want to continue playing because he feels his time is more valuable getting the vote out, helping protesters, etc. And one thing interestingly that he said when the NBA did come back, he said, 25% of my time is here and 75% of my time is elsewhere. Meaning that even though he's playing basketball at a really high level, he's not going to be focusing as much time as he would on basketball as he should versus other things. And I think that's just really impactful and speaks to kind of like the situation of everyone and the volume of character. But yeah, I think that's a question that we definitely can't answer this podcast. So we're going to continue it at our next podcast. But if anyone has any questions or dealing with anything, always be sure to reach out to our Instagram at mindfulme Inc. And
so as always, follow our social media at mindfulme Inc. Visit our website website at mindfulme with 2Ls.org, and subscribe to our YouTube channel with the same name, Mindful Me Inc., and listen to our podcasts and meditations on all platforms: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
And next week, we look forward to a meditation with Dan Katz and the next episode of Mind Watch with Dan and Thomas. Thank you all for listening to Align Your Mind. Remember, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Thank you. See you guys in 3 weeks.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Align Your Mind with Jonathan and Alexa. Be sure to visit mindfulme.org for videos, meditations, and podcasts just like this. You can also listen to Mindful Me resources on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts by just searching Mindful Me. Mindful with 2 L's, space, M-E. We can't wait to see you on there. Be sure to visit our social media at Mindful Me Inc. to stay updated on the latest news and events. I hope you have a great rest of your day.